Welcome back to the battles of the American Civil War. And as the show rages on, so does too the war. We're in the month of September, slowly winding down 1861 in the first year of the war, where things haven't been really too bad. We've had one battle with a few thousand casualties. Other than that, I mean, it's been 40, 50 here, 150 here. I mean, obviously it's a lot because one is a lot, but in the scope of what's to come in the next couple years, that's relatively small numbers compared to what we're getting into. But we ain't there yet because coming up, we got the battles.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
We got the battles of Blue Mills Landing.
Baby, you ain't seen nothing yet.
The battles of Barbourville, the Battle of Canada Alamosa, and the Battle of Greenbrier Landing in today's episode. All of these relatively short battles. Some of them are even described as actions. Not even really battles, skirmishes, what have you.
Skirmishes?
Skirmishes, leaving off of the Battle of Lexington, first Lexington, on September 13th to 20th. While that's raging on, we have the Battle of, it's actually an action of Blue Mills Landing, which takes place September 17th in Clark County, Missouri. Same time as Lexington. These guys are fighting all over the place.
Right. It's also known as the Battle of Liberty, though.
Battle of Liberty. So, after his victory at Wilson's Creek in August, which we covered, Price began a campaign to gain control of Missouri, which we covered. Union troops had been guarding the Hannibal and St. Joseph Railroad and its terminus in St. Joseph, Missouri. When these Union forces were pulled away to meet Price's army, Confederate sympathizers from northwestern Missouri seized St. Joseph and sacked the town. On September 15th, about 3,500 men in the Missouri State Guard, plus a number of irregulars from St. Joseph, set out for Lexington. In the evening, Price sent Brigadier General David R. Atchison from Lexington to help these men, mostly new recruits, across the river near Liberty.
Okay.
So while the Battle of Lexington...
We got some locals taking over. Not even part of any army. Sympathizers.
So while the Battle of Lexington's taking place, David Atchison leaves there to go help these guys.
Right. Union troops, 16th Illinois Infantry, 39th Ohio Infantry, guarding the Platte River Railroad Bridge in Buchanan County, which had earlier been sabotaged in the Platte Bridge Railroad tragedy. These troops started moving to Liberty. At the same time, Union Lieutenant Colonel John Scott led a small force, about 500 men, for the 3rd Iowa Infantry, about 100 Missouri Home Guards, and one 6-pound smoothbore cannon.
Ooh, smoothbore. It's not going to go very ffar.
What you got? We got that smoothbore cannon. What's it shooting? 6-pounders, baby.
How far is it shooting? About 6 feet, baby.
I'm guessing what?
Probably about 100
yards.
feet.
About 100 yards.
100, maybe.
Maybe 100 yards.
Yeah, because the 12-pounders, what we say, they were like 500 yards or something
like that. Anyway, Lieutenant Colonel John Scott was coming from Cameron towards Liberty. And we're in Missouri?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Heavy rain, bad roads, limited their progress to only 7 miles a day that day.
Damn,
can you imagine only going 7 miles in one day?
They even had to deal with bad roads in 1861. Right. Jeez.
Dang. I wonder if Gretchen Whitmer's great-great-great-great-grandma... We're going to fix these damn roads.
She'd have to be the governor of Missouri.
Right. We're going to fix these damn roads.
We're going to fix these damn roads.
16th of September, 1862. Scott camped. No, still 1861, isn't it?
Obviously.
16th September, 1861. Scott camped in Centerville, 10 miles north of Liberty, where he heard artillery fire in the distance. He was like, hear that, boys? That's what we're going to be doing tomorrow.
Lieutenant Colonel Scott broke camp at 2 a.m. on 17th of September. He arrived in Liberty at 7 a.m. At that point, Southern troops were already crossing the Missouri River at Blue Mills Landing. Lieutenant Colonel Scott sent 20 mounted scouts towards the landing to locate the enemy and determine the status of their crossing.
Okay.
At a location near the modern-day intersection of Liberty Landing Road and Old Highway 210, the rear guard of Atchison's troops waited in ambush. The Union scouts rode directly in the trap with 4 of their men killed and 50 severely wounded. Wait, I thought he only sent 20. That doesn't make any sense. The surviving scouts retreated back towards Liberty. At noon, Scott began moving his entire force towards the river landing. How do you send 20 mounts and 50 get wounded? Oh, a fifth.
A fifth.
Okay, all right. 4 men killed and a fifth severely wounded.
They couldn't just say 4 men killed or severely wounded?
4 men killed and a 5th severely...
And a 5th of those...
Oh, a 5th person severely wounded, not a 5th. I was taking it as a fifth of the 20, right.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit, okay, 50. First I went from 50 to 5th.
4 killed, 1 wounded.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Surviving scouts retreated back towards Liberty, and Scott began moving his entire force towards the river landing at noon.
Ooh, all right. We like that. Well, General Atchison, who had lived in Liberty, deployed his men in the brush on either side of the Missouri River bottom. He should know everything about this place.
You would think.
He deployed his men on either side of the Missouri River bottom land road leading to the landing. Nice. At about 3 p.m., Scott's troops encountered the State Guard pickets and were attacked from both sides.
Uh-oh.
Scott's artillerymen fired 2 rounds of canisters, inflicting some damage. However, a fresh volley from the State Guard scattered or killed most of the gunners.
Jeez.
Scott ordered his outnumbered force to fall back towards Liberty, hauling off the gun by hand.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Right.
Wait,
a lot of times they just leave it.
I would say you'd have to drag it by horse, right?
Usually that or a donkey. Atchison attempted a flanking movement on the federal right, which resulted in a sharp fight. Mm-hmm. The Union force continued to withdraw, firing as they retreated, taking with them nearly all their wounded, but abandoning their ammunition wagon and a caisson.
Caisson.
Remember what a caisson is, guys?
We went over that last couple episodes ago. State Guard pursued for some distance, but Atchison did not press the attack. Just before nightfall, Scott's force retired to Liberty, entering the town just about an hour after sunset. Atchison and the State Guards from northern Missouri crossed the river to reinforce Price in a successful attack on Lexington, which is going on at the same time.
Right.
After the sunset, the Union troops returned to retrieve their dead from the field. The battle, which lasted about an hour, was a decisive victory for the pro-Southern Missouri State Guard.
Pro-Southern. Not even officially part of the Confederate Army.
Well, because they're in Missouri.
Right.
Missouri remain.
They're split.
Right? Missouri, well, they remain neutral throughout the whole war.
Well,
they're never
split.
Well, I know, but officially they never took any side.
Yeah, they're Switzerland.
Well, we know the governor was pro-South.
Right. 19 Union troops died as a result of the fighting. Approximately 80 were wounded. 3 men of the Southern Command were killed. 18 were wounded. Scott and his troops returned to Liberty, where they established a hospital in Jewell Hall on the William Jewell College campus. Surviving members of Scott's command buried their dead comrades near Mount Memorial Cemetery, which today is part of the William Jewell campus. Those soldiers were moved to the Fort Leavenworth National Cemetery, 1912. That's that battle, guys.
All right, short little.
That was a deadly freaking battle.
Short little battle, yeah. What was 19 plus 3, so 21 people, 22 people died altogether on both sides.
Plus the other 4?
No, it's
it's all together?
Right. Well, 19 Union troops.
Right. 80 wounded, though, and most of them probably never fought again.
And how many of those 80 died a few years later? That's not even included in the death count. So that brings us to the Battle of Barbourville, which is taking place 2 days later on September 19th. Also the same time as the Battle of Lexington is still raging. This one is in Knox County, Kentucky, so just right there.
Right.
During the campaign known as the Kentucky Confederate Offensive. The battle is considered the first Confederate victory in the Commonwealth and threw a scare into Federal commanders who rushed troops to central Kentucky to try to repel the invasion. April 15th, 1861, the day after the U.S. Army surrendered Fort Sumter, President Abraham Lincoln called upon the states and union to provide volunteers. We know that. Pro-Confederate Kentucky Governor Beriah McGoffin. That sounds like a made-up sketch from like Mad TV or something. Right. He refused to send troops, but since the majority of the members of the Kentucky General Assembly were pro-union, Lincoln's call for volunteers did not prompt the states to succeed.
Sure didn't.
They eventually did, though, didn't they? Pretty sure.
Kentucky?
No.
No, Kentucky South.
Yeah, no. Kentucky never joined the South.
Kentucky never did?
No. I think because Kentucky's a border state.
Right.
So those states never joined in the middle right there.
Right.
As far as I'm aware, I guess we could be proven wrong.
I think Kentucky was a southern state. It was the last state.
Along with Missouri was a state with representatives in both Congresses, had regiments in both the Union and Confederate armies.
What?
So they were both, I don't think they were ever officially.
Right, there's no way.
Which joined the Confederacy after the Civil War.
Huh?
after the Civil War started, I'm assuming. Why did Kentucky not join the Confederacy? Wait, come on, guys. After 1862, it was largely under Union control, but they never officially joined either side.
All right.
So, yeah. Because it was Missouri, Kentucky, and who else is right by Kentucky right there? Because it was like those three states that never joined either side because they were right on the border of each because they had
Kansas.
The northern part of that state was Union and the southern was
It'd be Kansas.
Confederates. Oh, interesting. Okay. Cleared that up.
Right.
Yeah, but did not... a lot of them were pro-Union, so they didn't succeed to the Confederacy, although some of them wanted them to. May 16th, a Kentucky Legislative Committee recommended that the state remain neutral in the conflict.
Neutral. And
Governor Goffin proclaimed the state's neutrality on May 20th. In elections on August 5th, 1861, Kentucky voters returned a veto-proof majority of pro-Union members to the Kentucky House of Representatives and Kentucky Senate. August 6th, 1861, Camp Dick Robinson, a Union camp, was established near Lexington. On September 2nd, 1861, the Kentucky General Assembly raised the U.S. flag over the state capital at Frankfort. So that's just a couple of weeks from the battle.
Right.
Interesting.
Moving on to the 3rd September, 1861, Confederate Major General Leonidas Polk ordered Brigadier General Gideon Pillow to seize Columbus, Kentucky on the Mississippi River before Union forces could do so.
Smart.
They needed to do that. This ended Kentucky's neutrality, which led to Union Brigade General Ulysses S. Grant, former, and he is a former now, but future
former president.
Right. He seized Paducah, the city of Paducah in Kentucky, on the 6th of September, 1861. Where Paducah?
Why wasn't that on our list?
Right. And other military movements and actions by Union and Confederate armies in Kentucky soon afterwards. So there's just everywhere, right? Brigadier General Felix Zollicoffer's Confederates had moved from Tennessee to push from the Cumberland Gap into central Kentucky in an effort to gain control of that important border state. 14th September, 10 days after his 5,400-man force left their base. Dang, that's a pretty nice little army there. Zollicoffer occupied the Cumberland Gap, took position at the Cumberland Ford near present-day Pineville, Kentucky, to counter Unionist activity in the area. So they're just setting up. It's like a little.
All they're doing is strategist, like Risk.
Right.
You're just placing battle, guys. Right. Eventually, you'll get to a horse, and then sometimes a cannon.
When you get two cannons, it's time to fight.
Or a horse and a cannon. I mean, for much of the summer, Union sympathizers had been organizing and training recruits from Kentucky and eastern Tennessee at Camp Andrew Johnson near Barbourville, Kentucky.
Ooh, Barbourville.
Zollicoffer was determined to seize this camp and eliminate the threat to Confederate position. He also wanted to relieve pressure on the army of Albert S. Johnston and divert Union troops away from Johnston's command.
Okay. In a heavy morning fog, September 19th, 1861, Zollicoffer sent forward about 800 men under Colonel Joel A. Battle.
Well, that's convenient, huh?
Camp Andrew Johnson had largely been vacated, with the recruits moved to nearby Camp Dick Robinson, where several thousand federal troops were gathered under the command of Brigadier General George H. Thomas.
Several thousand.
As Battle's men approached Camp Johnson, they encountered a force of 300 pro-Union home guards under Captain Isaac J. Black, who hastily removed the planking from the bridge to prevent the Confederates from crossing it. Sharp skirmishing broke out. Battle's superior numbers prevailed, and Zollicoffer won a victory.
Good for him.
Yeah, right. His men seized the camp, destroying the buildings, captured the arms and equipment left behind by the retreating recruits.
Yeah, well,
it's a moral victory. Really.
And their recruits.
It was already vacated. They knew that 300 men wasn't going to do nothing.
Right. Black reported his casualties as 1 man killed, 1 wounded, and 13 captured. Fighting in the open, the attacking Confederates lost 7 men killed in the encounter. Although Zollicoffer briefly withdrew to his camp at Cumberland Gap, he sent a detachment of his men to drive off another Union Home Guard force at a camp at Laurel Bridge in Laurel County, Kentucky, soon after the Battle of Barbourville.
Okay.
On September 28th, another detachment seized 200 barrels of salt and destroyed the Goose Creek Salt Works in Clay County, Kentucky.
Uh-oh.
Why? You can't take out salt.
Uh-oh. In response to Zollicoffer's actions, Union Brigadier General Thomas sent troops under Colonel T.T. Girard to set up Camp Wildcat at Rock Castle Hills, which was near London, Kentucky. And there were 2 set up at Wildcat Mountain, 30 miles north of the Salt Works. What they were doing there, they're going to secure the ford on the Rock Castle River. And obstruct the wilderness road passing through the area.
Right.
Okay, that's a lot of stuff to do.
Right.
This set the stage for the Battle of Camp Wildcat on October 21st,
Which we'll have coming up, obviously.
After Zalikafer returned to the offensive on October 16th.
All right, well, that's that battle. We're going to go all the way in New Mexico now again for the Battle of Canada Alamosa, which was known to the Union, or just simply Alamosa as it was known to the Confederates. Just a little skirmish on the late evening of September 24th and the morning of September 25th. 1861 is one of several small battles that occurred in Confederate Arizona near the border with the Union-held New Mexico. This one being the largest.
Right.
This battle occurred about 35 miles south of Fort Craig at the village of San Ignacio de la Alamosa, familiarly known as Alamosa. Yes,
right.
Near the confluence of the Alamosa Creek with the Rio Grande. Alamosa was wrongly identified in Union Army reports as Canada Alamosa, the name later given to what is now present-day Monticello, New Mexico.
Okay.
Bethel Copewood, the Confederate commander, correctly identified it as Alamosa in his report of September 29th, 1861.
Lieutenant Colonel John R. Baylor, who had led the 2nd Texas Mounted Rifles.
Oh, hey, do you think that's the guy that Baylor is named after?
Baylor.
The college?
It's very possible. I doubt it, though.
He is the Texas Mounted Rifle commander.
Oh, shit. Lieutenant Colonel John R. Baylor, who had led the 2nd Texas Mounted Rifles into New Mexico territory 1 month earlier, defeated the Union garrison of Fort Fillmore at the First Battle of Mesilla.
We did that one. Go back, check it out.
Proclaimed heir to Confederate Arizona.
Yep.
And appointed himself governor.
He did some stuff. He was like, I'm governor now.
Sent patrols up to Rio Grande to keep watch on Union posts as Fort Craig and Fort Stanton near the 34th parallel. So you go watch those two forts, and you let me know if any action comes this way. 112-man detachment Confederate cavalry under Captain Bethel Coopwood with his spy company and units of the 2nd Texas Mounted Rifles followed a route north toward Fort Craig, west of the Rio Grande and the wagon road along the foot of the mountains. Sort of like just off the beaten trail, right? Along the
I
way.
wouldn't say they're off the beaten trail when they're on a wagon road.
Well, they weren't.
Clearly are.
It's at just west.
They follow a route. Oh, just west of the wagon road. Right.
Along the way, they noted various streams and springs the Army might use.
Hey, man, look at that. We could camp here, get some fresh, clean water. Right. 2 days after the engagement in Canada, Alamosa 2 days before, not after. 2 days before the engagement at Canada Alamosa on the 23rd of September, 1861, Coopwood's Confederate troops captured 9 men from the New Mexico Volunteers after a brief skirmish due north of Fort Craig. The force was questioned, and the Confederates learned that 350 men garrisoned the fort with no artillery. Why do you have a fort with no artillery? I don't understand this. With this information, they turned to retrace their steps southward.
Uh-oh.
The Union Army, specifically the Regiment of Mounted Riflemen at Fort Craig, had launched a reconnaissance mission to guard against the approach of Confederate forces up the Rio Grande.
Okay.
The unit sent was a recently formed unit of New Mexican militia called Mink's Independent Cavalry Company. Captain John H. Mink's company stopped at the village of San Ignacio de la Alamosa, or La Alamosa, on the south side of Arroyo Alamosa. How many Alamosas are there?
Right.
There, Mink ordered his men to build a camp next to the village.
Okay.
The camp consisted of a corral and breastworks to subdue any possible and sudden Confederate counterattack.
Right. Well, before they can get this finished, September 24th, about 5 p.m., the Union force of around 100 and under Captain Minks received information that mounted rebels had been seen in a southern direction from the camp. A 6-man cavalry troop with a Mexican scout was dispatched, who returned saying the sighted men were Union deserters who evaded capture. Later that night, Union troops at the Canada Alamosa reported another sighting of armed men. Some said the unknown men in the dark fired into the town, but this has never been confirmed. In response, Captain Minks put his troops on high alert.
Yeah, I would assume so. There's just random guys running around.
They should be on high alert anyway.
Right. I mean, you guys are in the middle of a war.
Jeez, morons.
At this time, a few horses escaped the corral. About 10 men were ordered to bring them back, but some 30 ended up in the chase before Minks could prevent it.
Dang.
Most of the 30 men deserted into the desert, crossing the Rio Grande to East Bank and headed for Paraje, where another independent company of New Mexican cavalry guarded the approach along the Jornada del Muerto. A terrible Native American yell was heard, which had the Union troops thinking they were under attack by Apache. Then came the sound of cavalry and the shout, "Here's their camp, give them the hell." At that moment, the Union force they knew they were not being attacked by Apaches, but by 12 to 15 Confederate troops commanded by Captain Coopwood from Mesilla.
Oh,
damn! So they went out with they went out with like some false flag shit at first.
Right. Well, what they heard was it wasn't no Apache, dreadful Indian yell. No, that was the rebel yell.
It might have been, right? I don't know. This is New Mexico. They didn't even know about the rebel yell, did they?
No, I don't even know if they knew there was a war going on.
They're like, yeah, they never even knew. This is not even part of the Civil War to them. They're just, this is happening in Texas and fucking New Mexico. So,
right. What? You tell me we've been at war for 4 years? I've been at war for 20.
Right. I've been doing this shit for the last 2 decades.
The firing commenced. Rebel cavalry first attacked the Union's army's main line. After the attack was repulsed, the rebels fell back to town. The dozen Confederate cavalrymen had attempted to rout the Union army with the cover of nightfall, but failed to do so.
Only 12? How many guys are they attacking?
Right, they had a lack of firepower. The shooting stopped for a short while. This made the captain and his men think the rebels had retreated or playing a ruse to lure Mink's men into a more effective range.
Yeah, I think it's the second one. So Captain Minks and a number of his men slowly advance into the town on foot. Oh, gosh. Leaving his main body at camp. Not seeing anything, the force withdrew to find that even more Union troops had deserted. So they're like, the captain's out of here. We're leaving this shithole, dude.
Like, yeah.
Oh, jeez. Lieutenant Sanchez of the Union was ordered to bring the deserters back. Then Minks attacked. The attack was made to drive the rebels out of town or to set fire to the perimeter houses, which provided cover for the Confederates. I get it. The United States cavalry advanced with wood and matches.
Well, unfortunately for the Union, Confederate force was larger than Minks had anticipated, which we thought was 112. They had also taken the houses Minks intended to burn.
Oh, well, burn them with it inside.
The advance was stopped by volleys of musket fire, and after 10 minutes, the Union force had been retreated back near camp, at which they started.
Back to square one, boys.
By this time, the Confederates had taken a hill next to the road, which led to Fort Craig.
Uh-oh.
Fighting continued for a long while. At almost daybreak, Captain John Minks had found his men reduced to the number of 10.
Jeez.
The 10 and the captain fought off the Confederates at a long range for a few hours while trying to communicate with the main force in camp. Once again, the main body had deserted or withdrew, thinking Minks and his assault party had been massacred.
Oh, my gosh, dude.
They're like, what are we going to do? Well, I'm telling you what, I think Minks is dead. I'm out.
Why is it the Union is always so unprepared like this? I don't understand. Poorly trained.
Well, this is all in New Mexico.
It doesn't matter. It's happening in Virginia.
Yeah, but you want your best guy out in New Mexico.
It's ridiculous, dude. This Union sucks.
You want your best guy out in New Mexico.
Well, you don't want your worst either.
That's right.
Especially if the whole quote unquote war was to
expansion.
Do with expansion and shit. You wanted somebody out there to do something.
Yeah, but you first got to deal with home.
If the Confederates were smart, they would have sent a bunch of troops and guys to conquer all that shit while the war was raging.
Right.
Or the Union, either or. Nobody did shit.
Nobody did.
Minks realized this and decided to fight as long as possible in order to prevent the pursuit and capture of his retreating main body.
Right.
Looking through his spyglass, Minks witnessed about 60 mounted rebels ready to attack.
Ooh.
Well, Minks surrendered between 7 and 8 a.m. in order to prevent further casualties to his remaining 10 men.
Well, when you see 60 guys in
right,
horses.
I think you're a little outmatched there, bud.
Right.
The retreating main body made its way back to their fort and then followed up their defeat with another patrol farther south of Canada, Alamosa. Minks reported that only one of the remaining 10 men was wounded. Okay. Good for them. Confederate reports say that 4 other men were killed and 6 wounded. The 10 men and Captain Minks were taken to Mesilla as prisoners. 12 other troops, deserters or not, were also captured by the rebel cavalry. At least 3 Confederates were wounded. None were reported killed.
Deserters or not?
Or not. They just rounded up anybody.
Even, they thought, I'm a deserter. They'd be like, hey, yeah, but you still fought for the Union. Right?
I'm thinking just anybody they found up in the open by the area. They're rounding them up, probably.
Well, if they're definitely a soldier.
Maybe. We all know they weren't wearing all the same uniforms and shit. So
very true.
The rebels also captured a good sized amount of supplies and a few horses and wagons.
Oh, look at that!
Hey, man, that might be the most important thing they did.
You ain't kidding. The next day, September 26th, after the Battle of Alamosa was over, Union Cavalry Patrol under Captain Robert M. Morris skirmished with Confederates involved in the Alamosa engagement and the skirmish near Fort Thorne. That was the battle. This skirmish occurred 30 miles southeast of the town at the north end of Mesilla Valley and 15 miles north of Fort Thorne. Union Colonel Edward Canby In his report of the engagement, said 10 Confederates were killed and over 30 wounded in a fight that lasted 1 hour and 42 minutes. The rebel commander Coopwood, in his report to Lieutenant Colonel Baylor, reported 2 of the men were killed and 7 others wounded. Captain Minks confirmed this with this report of the 2 skirmishes written in captivity and allowed to be sent to his superiors.
Oh, good for him.
Right.
Union casualties were reported to be 6 wounded. This was one of the several other small battles in the region. The intelligence Coopwood's Confederate troops obtained from 9 men from the New Mexico Volunteers captured north of Fort Craig was returned to Baylor. They now knew that it only had a 350-man garrison and no artillery. Additionally, their work finding water sources along the mountains west of the Rio Grande would, for the next year, allow the defeated Confederate army to survive their retreat south to Fort Thorne following the Battle of Peralta that trapped them on the east bank, which will come up on the Battle of Peralta.
So nothing's really gaining or...
Nah.
This is just...
Not New Mexico, man.
No, this is just garbage. It's garbage, really.
Well, now we go back to the heart of the war. Back in old West Virginia, which is in Pocahontas County, Virginia, the Battle of Greenbrier River, also known as the Battle of Camp Bartow, took place on October 3rd, 1861. In mid-September of 1861, Confederate troops established Camp Bartow in the Cheat Mountain area. Okay. The Confederates, under the command of General William B. Taliaferro, had the advantage of knowing the land, but their numbers were greatly reduced due to sickness. Well, Taliaferro had reported that his army has been reduced to 1/3 of its strength.
Right.
That's not good going into some battles.
No. Controlling Union forces in Cheat Mountain and Tygart's Valley was General Joseph J. Reynolds. Reynolds' army spirits had been heartened due to their success in repelling General William W. Loring's troops. Right? They're like, yeah.
I believe that was at Cheat Mountain, right?
Yeah, they got a little excited there.
Last episode.
Reynolds believed that he would be able to defeat Taliaferro and clear the mountain for a quick route to Virginia. For 2 days it rained nonstop. Due to the cold weather, both troops lost men.
I would assume.
Reynolds' army was composed of 24th Ohio, 25th Ohio, 23rd
Infantry,
the 32nd Ohio, the 7th Indiana, the 9th Indiana, 13th Indiana, 14th Indiana, 15th Indiana, 17th Indiana, all those infantries. 4th U.S. Light Artillery Battery G, Captain Albion P. Howe, Loomis, Michigan Battery, Battery A, West Virginia Light Artillery, Captain Philip Daum, and with the parts of Robinson's Ohio Cavalry, Greenfield's Pennsylvania Cavalry, and the Bracken's Indiana Rangers. Holy goodness there.
That's a lot of stuff.
Right. Reynolds had about 5,000 men of different arms, infantry, cavalry, and artillery.
All right, well, good for him.
Dang.
Well, on the other side, Jackson's army consisted
Like
of...
an All-Star team, right?
Right. Of everybody.
Jeez, OP.
Jackson's army consisted of the 1st Georgia Infantry, 12th Georgia, under the command of Colonel Edward Johnson, 23rd Virginia, the 44th Virginia, and a battalion of the 25th Virginia, which was infantry, commanded by Colonel William B. Taliaferro, 3rd Arkansas Infantry, 31st Virginia Infantry, and Lieutenant Colonel Hansborough Battalion under the command of Colonel Albert Rust, Anderson's and Shoemaker's batteries, and a part of the Churchville Cavalry under Captain Sturrett.
All right.
And about 9 miles away, Colonel John B. Baldwin was stationed with the 52nd Virginia.
Dang. This is like one of the first little skirmishes or battles or anything where there was a mixture of Confederate. Usually it's just like a couple and one leader, right?
Right.
So that's a little...
Not today.
It's a little different. Reynolds' troops began to move at midnight, October 2nd, 1861. By daylight, they entered Greenbrier, roughly 4 miles from the Confederate camp. 8 o'clock in the morning, the Confederate soldiers guarding the camp left their post, and the Union soldiers entered the Confederate camp. Oh, my. Upon opening fire, the Confederate army was having trouble working their weapons, and while they were trying to fix them, they were forced to move out into the open due to the Union Army's significant firepower. Oh, geez, they got ambushed. Colonel John B. Baldwin, who was in charge of 52nd Virginia, heard the gunshots. He immediately left camp with all of his men and went to help the Confederates. By the time they reached the battlefield, they thought it was too late. But when the Union Army saw more men coming, they continued to fire, and the battle continued for approximately 5 more hours. Reynolds orders his troops to return to Cheat Mountain, breaking off the battle. So
that was it, huh? He just came in there, killed a bunch of people, and left.
Right. He knew he did a lot of damage.
Right. After the battle was finished, both sides realized the losses were not great. In an attempt to appear superior, both the Union and the Confederates increased the enemy's losses, and both reported that they had lost around 300 men. When the results were calculated, the Union had 8 men killed and 35 men wounded, Confederates lost 6 men, had 33 wounded,
Even battle.
13 missing.
Oh.
The result of the Battle of Greenbrier River was inconclusive. Nobody was a winner there.
Want to go by deaths? Confederates won.
Well, I guess. The Staunton-Parkersburg Turnpike Alliance received a $46,000 grant from the National Park Service to develop community consensus and a preservation plan for the future of the Greenbrier River Camp Bartow site.
Okay.
The preservation partner will seek community support for this plan and will address the future of the Camp Bartow Historic District.
Okay.
In the fall of 2016, in conjunction with the American Battlefield Trust and its partners, the West Virginia Land Trust acquired 14 acres that preserve the core of the battlefield. Oh. The organization plans to develop public access to the site in 2018, which I'm assuming it did so because that was 4 years ago.
Well, by now, I don't know. COVID probably ruined that.
COVID? No. Maybe. And that's it for this episode of Battles of the American Civil War. Literally,
a bunch of skirmishes.
Nothing major. No major tactical advantages or nothing.
None.
Coming up with these as Blue Mills Landing, Barbourville, Canada, Alamosa, and Greenbrier Landing.
Tactical. Maybe.
Nothing, dude.
No, nothing. I was going to say maybe New Mexico, but that wasn't. I don't really know how. We'll find out how important New Mexico is later.
It wasn't really tactical because it's not like they took over the fort.
Right.
All they did was just fight, and then they went back to their respective places, pretty much. Right. But hey, I told you, no battles left undid, big or small. We're gonna do them all.
No battles too big, no battles too small. We do them all.
That resulted in 3 Confederate victories and an inconclusive thing. So no Union victories for us today. Coming up next week, we got the Battle of Cockle Creek in Virginia, the Battle of Santa Rosa Island, our first Florida action that we've seen, the Battle of the Head of Passes in Louisiana, and probably the Battle of Camp Wildcat, which we discussed in this episode, and maybe the engagement at Fredericktown.
Sure.
Probably at least 5 or 6 coming up because none of these battles are big and they're all little guys.
You might even get in battles of Balls Bluff in there. Balls Bluff.
Yeah, because we only have 3, 6, 9, 10, 11 more battles until 1862. Oh, I lied. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19 more battles until the 1862. So, and the biggest one is a Class B coming in December, day after Christmas. So,
but don't you worry.
Yeah.
You Class A seekers.
You Class A seekers, because we have a total of 15 Class A battles in 1862 coming up.
So how many this year?
We only had 3.
3
in 1861, so a lot more major battles coming up. Yeah, we'll have at least 6 battles for the next episode because
shit's about to get crazy, guys. This first year was
about to get crazy.
It was like it's like the first couple rounds of a major boxing match. Everybody's just feeling each other out.
We had a total of 24 Class B batteries and Class B battles in 1862. So pretty much 30 major battles, 35 major battles coming up.
Fighting, baby.
35 major battles out of a lot.
A lot, buds.
40, 50, about 80 battles, 90 battles. So total in 1862 coming up compared to only 48 battles in 1861. So lots more, double the action in 1862, but we're getting a little ahead of ourselves because we're still 3 or 4 episodes off from even reaching 1862. But nevertheless, we'll be back next week for Blue Mills Landing. Well, no, we just did that one. Cockle Creek, Santa Rosa Island, Head of Passes, Camp Wildcat, engagement at Fredericktown, and probably Battle of Balls Bluff as well.
Yes.
And for that being said, if you guys are fans of history, because I would assume you are if you listen to this, go check out our other podcast we do called Outlaws and Gunslingers, where we just go through history of the most famous and not so famous outlaws and gunslingers, lawmen, criminals from the Wild West era to present day. Mixed in with a little prohibition, mixed in with a little bit of gang action. We just did a episode on the Unabomber.
Right.
So, I mean,
that was a good one.
It was a good one. Anything and everything over there.
Symbionese Liberation Army or
Liberation Army.
Check that out. James Jones.
Jonestown. Wyatt Earp.
We got
anybody
Doc
that
Holliday.
Anybody that was famous in the Wild West Prohibition era guys.
Butch Cassidy, Sundance Kid. Did we do that?
Yep. Lots of stuff. We got over 50 episodes over there, so go check us out over there, and we'll be back next week for another episode of Battles of the American Civil War. We are the Monthly Michiganders with
Bang, bang.